I believe that making abstract art has the power to change the way we think and the way we feel. And ultimately, it has the power to heal us. And if it can heal us personally, it can heal global communities. What I'm sharing today is an incredibly powerful conversation with 9 of the whole Artist Mastery Mentorship Artists that I currently work with. I felt that it was such a moving experience for myself as well as for the artists who were presenting and everyone who was witness to this conversation that I needed to share it with all of you. Hey everyone, welcome to Whole Artist Mastery. I am Marianne Mitchell. I have years of experience and knowledge, and I love sharing it with all of you to see you grow on your path as an artist. So if you like what you see, you can help the Whole Artist Mastery YouTube channel grow on its path by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Thanks so much. So what I'm sharing with you today is a video of a conversation that I offer in my monthly series called WAM Wednesday. It is free to everyone. All you need to do is subscribe to the Whole Artist Mastery YouTube channel with your email, and you will get on the mailing list, and you will receive information about all kinds of things. Few and far between. I'm a full believer in making my emails special as opposed to ubiquitous. And so you will receive information about WAM Wednesdays and what the subject of the conversation is going to be and when it is. So this particular WAM Wednesday was held on May 14th, 2025, and it was the conversation was really about the question, how do artists answer the question of how has the very rapid and radical changes that are happening in the global landscape, both politically, climate change wise, technology speaking, and also personally, whether that's in your personal relationships or something has happened to completely shift your mindset in some way. And how is that affecting your work, your artwork, the work that you make? So what you're going to experience, I so hope you will experience, is the raw emotion that each of these artists offer. And again, there are 9 mentorship artists that are working with me and that I asked to partake in this conversation because they're all wrestling with this question of how is what's happening in the world affecting my art, and also being able to, in ways, both in visual as well as verbal ways, articulate what's happening. I truly was blown away by the strength of their verbal articulation about the depth of emotion and intellectual thought that's inherent in their visual articulation of a story. I could ramble on and on here, but it is a little over an hour, and so I so hope that you will watch the whole conversation. You can watch it in bits and pieces or all at once, but I think it will truly be informative and maybe even transformational in the way you see yourself and your relationship to your work. So sit back, relax, enjoy, take in this conversation, and I look forward to hearing your comments down below. Please do engage and tell me how this affected you, one way or the other. And again, thank you so much for your continued interest in the Whole Artist Mastery YouTube channel. Welcome, everyone. I'm thrilled to have all of you here today, and welcome to those who are listening after this recording is sent out. This is a very special WAM Wednesday. I am thrilled that 9 of my mentorship artists have offered and expressed interest in talking about their work as it relates to the radical changes that we are all feeling, both personally and universally and globally. And what that means, at least in my thinking about all of this, is that it ranges from global issues that have to do with climate change, political upheaval, technological rapid change in our lives. It also has to do with our personal relationships and our personal transformation and rapid change that's happening within us during this time. So the artists who are talking today are talking about all of these issues across the board. I mean, not each person is not focused on all of these issues, but there's a range from some of us are sharing more personal stories about how things in their personal lives have affected them radically and changed them radically, as well as how the current political situation has been affecting them and climate change and so on. So it's a very powerful group of artists. I am just so honored that these people have chosen to work with me and have chosen to offer their lens today for all of you. So we have a lot to discuss, so that's all I'm going to say for now. The first thing I want to do is show you everybody's work together, because I think it's very cool to see this collection of art together. And the reason I think it's very cool is that this process of mentoring, at least my process in the whole artist mastery philosophy and approach to mentoring, is to really bring the individual voice to the foreground. And as you look at this group of artworks, paintings, the diversity is quite impactful, and the powerful expression in all of them, to me, is quite evident. So how we're going to do this is we're going to have 5 artists talk about their work, each about 5 minutes long, and then we're going to take a break to open the discussion for all of you to ask questions and comments. Then we're going to move on to the second 4 artists, 4 mentorship artists. And if there's time, then I will present my work at the very end and talk about my experience of late. So, and then at the end of that, there will be time for everyone to ask questions and make comments about people's work, which is why we decided to extend the time to 15 minutes beyond the hour. If you have to leave, feel free to leave. If you can stay, I would love for you to stay. So let's go back to, we're going to start off with Gwen. So Gwen, if you would kindly unmute yourself, and let me just make this bigger here. Oops. There we go.
Okay, one of the things that I've learned working with Marianne is that my work has actually always been about change and the impact of exterior things on me. So these pieces that I'm sharing today are about specifically my reaction to the changes, or what's going on politically, and how I feel about it. So the first one is called Fractured, and is telling my feeling about how all the sides don't seem to want to play together. The next one, these can all stay small, Marianne.
Okay.
The next one was how I felt at 4:30 a.m. on the 6th of November. The third
I
one
was
is,
bring it up, just to see, them a little bit.
okay.
Yeah.
This one was in anticipation of day one, which was January 20th, 2025. And the last one is the cream puff and the Nazi. So all of these are my personal reaction to politics. And
Yeah. So, but the thing that strikes me so strongly about your work, Gwen, is that in and of themselves, they are absolutely gorgeous abstract paintings, and are quite compelling visually as well as engaging emotionally, in my opinion, for myself. And so to then find out that, the underlying commentary, uh, and how beautifully expressed your feelings are about the political situation in line, color, shape, value, and texture. And I guess really what I'm trying to say is that it's a great example of the translation from a conscious verbal understanding of something and into the visual language. And so the experience of looking at these visually is quite provocative, and then learning where the source of inspiration comes from gives many other layers to the experience of looking at these. Do you feel that way too, Gwen?
I think this was my best lesson about, I mean, I didn't know what any of these were about when I started them. It was after I was thinking about how to title them, or what was going on, or how I wanted to move them along, that I realized what they were about. And so for me, this was the best demonstration of your, I hate to use the word method, but your ability for me to connect head, heart, soul, gut, whatever the words are. I don't know how to end the sentence. I'm really pleased with that I'm finally able to express what I want to express so much more powerfully than when I was trying to do it with what felt like a sledgehammer.
Yeah. Well, so what you've just expressed is, music to my ears, because the fact that you start out without any conscious awareness of what's coming out of you, and then it becomes apparent along the way, and then being able to use visual language to really guide your awareness of what these are about, is quite compelling. When I talk about what constitutes a whole painting, a whole piece of art, it has to do with the composition engaging one's mind, the colors and marks connecting emotionally through the use of the material and tools. And I think these really express that beautifully. So thank you very much, and we'll open it up to everyone else for comments shortly. So from here, we move to Marlene. Marlene, would you like to unmute yourself? And I have to go find.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I have to go see if I can find you.
Good morning.
Okay.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Well, my reality, or the perception of my reality, changed completely on October 7th
23
of 2023, with the atrocities that occurred in Israel. I'm a dual citizen, I should say. And my youngest son, within hours, was on a flight back to Israel. And he served bravely and honorably for 3 tours in Gaza. And for the first few months of this experience, I was pretty much non-functional. But then and I should add also that our dear friend's son remains one of the captives in Gaza. So we have a particularly close connection. By about March of 24, I was able to start painting again. And I would say by far the best part of this experience was that it transformed my work from very tight, attempting to loosen up, which was how I met Marianne in the first place, to just my soul just saying, I want out. I need something. I need an outlet. So for that, I'm grateful. Pardon my voice, it's just very emotional to me. So the first one is called Captivity. And I think about Alone, the young man who's now 22. He was 20 when he was kidnapped. And he remains in captivity. He's a jazz pianist. And we know from bystanders that he practices piano using his chest as a keyboard. The next one is one of several that I painted that I named In Our Dreams We Can Be Free. And the next one is I titled The Fog of War. And this is an example of where I got way too picky with the figure, which I love. I find the figure endlessly emotive. And that's what I studied for years. And Marianne forced me to dial it back to keep it fresh, which is always the thin line I walk between feeling great and then honing in on ridiculous details. So that's kind of my goal at this moment. And the final one, which I'm not quite done yet, but this is kind of hot off the press, I'm calling Untethered. Just a sense that the world is turned upside down and what we thought was right is, anyway. So those are my 4 to share with you today.
Thank you so much, Marlene, for, sharing your very vulnerable experience. And I would just like to say that, the difference between the work coming out of you prior to October 7th, 2023, and when we picked our work back up in March of 24, and giving you the space to just crack the egg open and let it pour out was astonishing. And I remember I remember seeing the first pieces coming out of you thinking, my God, these are incredible. Because you were accessing this, the channel was wide open to this very, very raw emotion. And in my own personal experience, as well as working with many artists, when that channel to very raw emotion is open, our best work happens. And that very raw emotion can be anything from extreme elation and joy to extreme grief and sadness and anger. It can be the whole gamut. And so where you are now is an interesting place where it's still raw, but you're able to come back to honing the voice and honing the work, which I see very definitely here in your work.
Thanks to you. Thank you.
It's a team effort. So, okay, thank you, Marlene. We're going to move on to Melinda. Hi, Melinda. Let me see if I can find you.
Am I unmuted?
You are. Yes.
Good. Thank you. I just have to say, I'm just sitting with the energy from Marlene's presentation, so it's sitting with me. Okay. When I started to work with Marianne a little more than 2 years ago. It was the start of my painting journey. And one of the things that I very quickly realized is that a principle or a belief or a way of being that is really central to me is also the root of my painting. And that is the idea that everything is flux. All is flux. Everything is movement, is energy in movement. And my paintings are all about the energy flowing through a movement. And I really reach out to the imagery of the four elements in my paintings, the elements of water, air, and to a lesser extent, fire, and also earth. So in a way, my painting is all about change, that momentary flow of energy, which sometimes is beautiful, sometimes it's awful, sometimes it's short-lived, sometimes it has a longer, slower arc. Which raises the question, how do I relate to this question for today? And I think for me, my read of the world, my experience of the world is that the changes that we are in are not just radical and rapid, but they're volatile and incredibly complex and interconnected. And that in a way, my feeling is that it is driving us to multiple existential crises. And I am both distraught about that when I look at my grandchildren and your grandchildren, and when I think about life on Earth. And I think it's like, how is it that we, conscious beings, are not able to stop ourselves from really obliterating and degrading the conditions for life on this planet? So that's kind of the energy that sits behind my work. And the four images that Marion put up here are all images that in one way or another are expressions of that. But they also reveal, I think, something about the process of painting for me, because I think of painting as a way of being in conversation. When I paint, I am in conversation with the world and in conversation with myself. And in the process of painting, I discover what is it that I really think and feel. And by evoking imagination, I see things that I couldn't have seen any other way. So for example, the very first image there was done very fast. It's done on paper. And it was just this momentary expression of this is the extent of the change that we're in. And so it's a very visceral feeling. When I get that out, it's an incredible awareness of where I am at and what feels true. The second image was an image that I painted when I was so stuck because I was so angry, in particular about how some of the environmental measures, the very tenuous pathways we have towards the future got obliterated, that I thought I just have to paint stuck. The irony, of course, is that when I looked back at this painting, I said, and there are actually pathways through. There are ways that you can actually find a way through. Again, the power of imagination to evoke something beyond what you can think. Some of them are more personal. This is another one of the fast ones, which is just this vortex feeling. And as I stepped back from this one, I remember my little granddaughter in Cape Town. Anybody who's been to Cape Town know the wind there, holding tight to you and saying, tight, tight. And to me, what this then speaks to is a reminder, if you want to, of we need to be connected. We need to be together. We're not in this alone. Jose Andres has this saying that says crisis pushes us out of our comfort and into our humanity. And I think that's kind of like the idea that sits behind this for me. And so the fourth image is in a way an image where all the things that I care about kind of come together. It's element of water mainly, but interacting with earth and air. And it's an image that evolved over many, many, many months. It's a larger painting on board. And I could not even see that this image actually had arrived. I was lucky to be in a mentorship forum where other people helped me look at this painting. And so in a way, this painting reminds me of why do I paint? It is an affirmation, if you want to, even when we paint things that are hard, of beauty and goodness and the power of imagination to cultivate hope for the future, because we need to remember the beauty if we want to create a future. And I just want to say something about the set of images that Marion's put up right at the beginning, everybody's images. When you look at that, it is such a collection of beauty. There's lots of pain and angst and fury and all kinds of other things behind it, but it is beautiful. And so I paint so that we can remember beauty.
Well, I think you said it all. Thank you so much for an incredible example of the fluidity between words and visual expression. And just for everyone's, edification, Melinda and I have been working together a little over 2 years, and the how far you've come in a respectively short period of time is astonishing. So thank you.
As I've said before, you're a very good mentor.
It's a team effort. So, okay, thank you, Melinda. We're going to move on to Dodge. And so Dodge, let me see if I can go find you now. And there you are. Hi. There you are.
Here I am. Hi. I'm glad you're doing this, Marianne, asking us the question, how does radical change show up in our work?
Mm-hmm. Great.
Because had you not asked the question, I think it would have just passed me right by. And what I'm seeing in my work is the incredible range of marks that I like to make. And I've been trying to think, I've been pulling my hair out literally and shaving it off, thinking, when is my style going to show up? How am I going to make marks on this canvas? And asking myself, thinking, all right, is it this? Is it that? Gee, I really like that painter. And I thought, and I was having a day in oil paint with those thoughts going through my head. And at the end of the day, I was just frazzled. I was extremely frustrated. And so I thought, oh, I just got to get this out, this feeling of frustration. So I grabbed some newsprint and a bunch of pastels and markers and things. And I just started drawing on the newsprint. And that's what we're looking at here with a pink and orange. And I just let the lines go. And it was just pure feeling. And this has never happened to me before. And it just felt so good to get these marks out. Like Melinda, you were saying in your work just now. Oh boy, it just felt like a release. And I tucked this thing away and wrapped up my painting for the day. Came down to the studio some days later, and I looked at this painting. I was getting ready for a conversation with Marianne, and we talked about this and talked about the feelings and what must have been happening. And I talked about the frustration, and then I talked more about the uncertainty and the radical changes that are happening to the foundation of democracy as I know it. And after our conversation, I thought, wow, I could spend a lot of time making paintings like the one on the left. But what do I really don't feel like that right now. It takes a lot of energy to have made that. So I made this one on the right, and I didn't intend to make it, but I thought to myself, I just have to get some order and make things very clear in my life. And because I can't turn on the news because disorder and uncertainty make me nuts. So what can I do to bring order? And I just had a blast painting in more or less black and white. But it wasn't until you asked the question, Marianne, how does radical change show up in our work? Until I looked back at these pieces and thought, well, what was I feeling at that time? Because when I started on this process of painting, I thought, how on earth am I going to express my feelings in paint? And now I'm beginning to see how that happens. And Melinda, you articulated it very well. But it's interesting for me, what I'm learning is, I think it's a retroactive step. And Marianne and I were just talking. It's part of that circular feedback between the feeling that we're trying to put on canvas and the composition and the colors and the things like that. And bringing those together. And I was just writing down the process again. And I think it happens somewhere between critical analysis into integration. That's, for me, where radical change happens in the process. And then once that happens and I get that sensation, then I think I'm going to bring things to resolution. So guess what the next piece is that I'm working on right now that just isn't ready to show. This was chaos and order. The next one is calmness, peacefulness, tranquility. And I just need to, relax. But I wouldn't have known that had you not asked the question, how's this showing up in my work? So thank you.
Oh, well, you're quite welcome. I think it was actually one of our conversations that kicked off the idea for me. So, anyway, that's wonderful to hear about the relationship between these two and how you're wrapping it all together. It was great. Okay, so we move to Diana. So here we are. Diana, where I have to go find you. There you are.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this opportunity to practice talking about my work, which is not one of my strengths right now, but is going to become that.
Good place to begin.
Great place to begin. And when Marianne asked in a group we were in about, how do your paintings relate to the radical change going on in this world, I thought, well, this doesn't relate to anything I've done. I couldn't even imagine it until she showed these 5 paintings in a row. And I just about lost it within myself, saying, oh my God, I have something to say about these things. And they all hang together, and they walk towards answering the question about how do they relate to radical change. So this one, it has given me my focus in my painting is dark and light, which can be interpreted in many different ways, but I think this one is my beginning, and the crack in the painting represents my conscious, perceptible attention to the relationship of dark and light in myself. And took me probably 2 months to figure that out and sit and stare at it. So this, I would say, is the beginning to the answer to that question. And the next one. And these two are sheltering. The one's called Sheltering, and the other one is Lighthouse. And I think these go perfectly into I need to feel protected. This is absolutely terrifying what we're going through, and I need a place to hide. So these are my hiding places. Sometimes they're the lighthouse and sometimes they're the darker piece. And this one, it makes me cry. It's very deep. I call it a hallowed. It's the darkest human destruction of culture and antiquity globally. And this came out very quickly. Within 2 days, this thing was on there. I couldn't even believe it. But it obviously, you can see it moves me a lot, and I don't want to sell it. And unfortunately, it was recently juried into a show. So this kind of captures the whole thing for me. And thankfully, it's big enough to really feel it. It's 24 by 36, so. Okay, the next one. And this one is the glimmer of light and hope peeking out behind my eyes, but only visible because of the dark. And I really love this one. So I guess I had more to say and feel than I was even aware of. So that's why we paint, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
Well, I think we all thank you for sharing your story, Diana, and for allowing your incredible depth of feeling to come to the foreground in your words and in your work, for sure. Here's the collection. So, does anybody have anything they want to say at this point? We can all take a collective sigh of pause here. You know, I think what we've just witnessed is a great testament to the power of expression visually and the connection between our conscious verbal understanding and how we translate that into very powerful visual stories. I would really like to hear from anybody here who has a comment about what you've seen or a question for any of the individual artists before we move on to the second group. Please unmute yourself before you start talking. Anybody? We all stunned? Michelle, we cannot hear you.
Is that better?
Thank you.
I hope I don't cry as well, but this was so powerful and amazing because I obviously meet sometimes with all of you, and what a premise that everyone went into to analyze their work, and what came out is just amazing. I thank you very much, everyone, for peeling back to your heart and soul for all of us.
Thank you for saying that, Michelle. Anyone else? The questions and comments can be addressed to both, you know, technical questions to any other kind of comment. Somebody going to say something?
I can say something actually, just to I mean, I think what, getting back to something maybe Melinda was saying, and that's kind of interwoven through all of them, is this emphasis on beauty, and that there is some reason why we paint. And it's a real invitation, I think, the way that what the panel was able to do was actually, for me at least, get me to reflect on why I paint, and how important that is for me, and what place beauty has in all of this. And so I don't know if any of the panelists want to comment on those questions. I mean, you've been very open in terms of what motivates you to paint. So, but you could just see how, how stunning the work is when it's coming from those deep places. So I just want to make that comment.
And Melinda here, I just want to add to what Sharon just said, is the very different personal starting places for people. There's so many different experiences and ways of being in the world that led people to make the art and then to engage with a question. And I just find that diversity quite, I mean, moving, interesting, all kinds of different, adjectives that I can add to that. But I think it's a great testimony to the importance of the individuality in making art. It comes from a very personal place, even though we may be speaking to fairly universal or general or global issues.
Mm-hmm. I want to just point one thing out. What I'm struck by, Sharon, you mentioned beauty, and I think as you look at all of the work, as you said, it's astonishingly beautiful. And for decades and decades, the art world has put way more emphasis on other kinds of expression, that beauty somehow is superficial for the art world to hold up as important. And what is so striking to me right now and looking and thinking about these works is we are all discussing the same topics that very overtly difficult, visually difficult works are discussing, that are anything but beautiful. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that through beauty can also communicate great anger and tragedy and political angst, maybe even more powerfully than when it's aimed at something other than beauty. I hope everybody understands what I'm saying, but it angers me greatly that the art world does not put a premium on beauty being an important aspect of investment collecting. So that's for another whole discussion, because I think we need to move on. Okay, so we're going to move to the second group of artists. I'm going to start with Eve. Eve, you want to unmute yourself and then I'll start sharing?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, well, I think I'm probably the newest or one of the newest members of Marianne's mentorship. And so I haven't had as much time to kind of go through the process of working with her, but I can say that in the few short months that I have, it's been really incredible for me. I do feel like I have undergone radical and rapid change just working with you, Marianne. So thank you, first of all, very much for that. And one of the things that I've learned is that I was kind of used to doing art in a certain way previous to knowing or working with Marianne. And through all the discussions with her, we something got triggered, and this first piece kind of came out of nowhere. And like Melinda and Dodge, it was a piece born out of just kind of spontaneous energy. It was all done in about 10 minutes, and I didn't think about it. And when I stood back and looked at it, I realized what a breakthrough thing this was for me, because it really represents opening up kind of a flow, opening up a movement, and embracing change, embracing flow and movement, because without change, we don't grow. You know, change can be, well, change in itself is predictable. There will always be change. The consequences of it are unpredictable. And how we react to it is what's most important. How do we deal with change and apply the lessons from it to ourselves and to our lives? And how do we take advantage of a given moment in time to really break free of old ways of thinking, old way, you know, kind of past patterns of reactivity that we might have had in our lives? So that was kind of the first step forward, or one of the steps forward for me. And then I started thinking about symbolism, because to me, symbolism is very important. And it's one of those things that I think we're really used to having in our everyday lives. It's its own visual language. And, you know, there's a lot of meaning behind a lot of these things that we don't always consciously know, but we kind of recognize them. So this particular piece, again, was done very quickly, and it's based on the symbol of Awen, which is a Welsh Druid symbol, and represents flow of energy, opening of oneself to the divine and to creativity. The three sort of aspects of it represent longevity, wisdom, and strength. And I think these are all very powerful concepts that are important for us to try to find in all of the things that are going on around us. And it speaks to a lot of, you know, kind of universal truths, I think, as well. We've all been here before, you know, not to in any way downgrade or not make as acute and as important and immediate the pain that I've heard a lot of you express. I'm, you know, living in Europe. I'm a Canadian, and so a lot of what's going on in the US, I'm very aware of, and I watch it carefully, because I know it impacts everything around the world. But I don't have, it's not like an immediate thing for me. I'm kind of a bit of an observer, I might say, but I recognize that, you know, I think these are things that have happened before, you know, globally. If you think about the beginning of the 20th century, you know, prior to World War I, all of the upset and instability that was going on then, which isn't to say that I think we necessarily have to follow the same pattern. I certainly hope not. So anyway, so that's part of that theme for me. And then the last one is a more personal one, which represents to me what goes on beneath is much more powerful and drives us very strongly in terms of what happens above. So all of the sort of everyday activities that are going on, you know, in the political world or even in our personal lives are a manifestation of something else going on at a deeper level. And I don't pretend to know what that is, but I do feel it strongly, and I feel it within myself. So everything is kind of changing from the bottom up. And it's, again, how do we respond to that? That's important. And how do we learn from it and grow from it and take advantage of this moment to, you know, do something individually and collectively to, you know, have a positive impact on all of us, you know, on all of us close and far. So yeah, that's kind of the story behind my three.
It's wonderful for me personally to hear you articulate it the way you have, Eve. And I just want to reiterate that in looking at these three pieces, they really are a game changer from the work that you had been doing. And I'm so glad to hear that our conversations are opening up that channel for you. So thank you very much for that. So let's move on to Sharon.
Yeah,
Sharon.
I'm
Hey.
here. Okay. This was a great opportunity for me when Marianne suggested the radical change. I mean, I think part of me got attracted both to the change, but also to the radical. And I think that, as you can see, like when I looked at the pieces that we were going to show today all together, it really hit me what I'm doing or trying to do. In a way, I think that having seen them and undergoing the process of painting them separately, I hadn't really put together in a way. I think these are very much coming from my own sort of experience of my concern with the environment and the kind of violence that's enacted on our world and on the planet, and how somehow that is in relation to my own violent sort of childhood that I experienced. And how do I think about bringing those two things together in a way that doesn't just dwell in the pain, but can sit with the pain and also offer something else. And I think that those spaces of disruption, or those shapes of disruption that that always seem to be appearing in my work, are sometimes spaces, obviously, they take different shapes, like a wound. That's quite obvious. But I also want to see them as spaces that, when we sit with them, can also offer something other that is a site of change. And so I think a lot of my work has been around my own personal change, but also how do I see that in relationship to my outside sort of environment, and how do I bring those two things together, which I'm still excuse me, kind of struggling with. I get very emotional when I'm talking about this. And one of the things that I don't want the paintings for me to dwell in the wounded parts, but I also want, I think, and what I'm struggling to articulate is also a site of a spaciousness, a site of contemplation, a site of aspiration, maybe a kind of a space that invites something different, and that is a healing space in some way. And I think it also taps into my own practice as a Zen Buddhist, and seeing those spaces in terms of like a spiritual space, a space of emptiness, as you know, we talk about it within Buddhism, and how it enables me, at least, to sit with the pain without kind of letting it take over. And so what I'm seeing in these pieces, and what I see in some of my other work, is trying to articulate that that connection. So I seem to have these three kinds of areas that I'm articulating in some ways through my visual language, which is the kind of the environmental violence that I see, the violence, the very personal violence, and then these spaces of potential healing. So I think I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, and hearing you speak about this, Sharon, it really strikes me how violence and tragedy and great destruction and anger can be presented in such a beautiful way, and the complementarity of the beauty and violence and quietness and what's the opposite of quietness? Noise. I mean, I guess you could say noise and violence and quietness and beauty. That these embody really all of that. So that's something that I myself play with, really not play with, but is the foundation of my work as well, is this complementarity of opposing elements coming together. And your work does that in a beautiful way. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Marianne, for everything.
Okay, Mary Ida. Let me see where you are.
I am back.
Hi. Hi. So, what's going on?
So I came to art later in
Hey, Mary Ida. You're breaking up.
uh,
I don't see where you are.
as I was having personal disruptions in yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
you're.
it's raining here.
Oh, yes, the rain gets
Can
in
you
the
hear
way,
me?
doesn't it? Yeah, you were breaking up. So why don't you start again?
Um, I came to painting rather late in life as I was having personal things in my world and found myself trying to explain myself and um, um, finding the best way to do that was through visual imagery. One thing was that I wasn't used to pain or disruption in my life then, so I thought, and suddenly I realized that I don't have any other emotions than happy, and I was never allowed to have those emotions. And what I needed to do was figure out what my emotions were. So through my painting, I try to reveal those, and the painting acts a way for me to remember those emotions and to release them off of my shoulders, these deep emotions, and stop sweeping them under the rug.
Mary.
So, or um, I can feel held. Bursts. The one on the upper right is one of my earlier ones, and that is literally I put some acrylic paint on this giant piece of watercolor paper and I stomped on it with my feet. I was really angry. And I don't normally get angry. So this was just have at it, stomp my feet, like what came out of that. The first painting was, which was the upper left, is one where I had felt that my relationship had just received a dagger to the heart. And it was just this incoming, unexpected blow, breaking my heart in two. Another one that was in the group, hold on, lower left, was something that came spontaneously. I wasn't thinking about it, but it evolved into an image that I call melancholy and anxious. And it was how I was feeling at the time. So just it just sort of showed up unexpected. Then another one was the middle upper was this sense that I'd never experienced before, which was feeling lonely. Nobody was around. My partner, husband was not there. And I was feeling really lonely. And this showed up. And just sort of, it's a soft, quiet, but alone expression. And then the fifth one I have is also fairly quick, but it's the idea that this is all very complicated and it's not at all clear. And it's a little bit literal in that sense. But I look at that and I say, yes, it is complicated and it's not clear. And it's okay to remember that, because there are moments where it is calm and wonderful. And I appreciate those moments. But I know that the complicated and not at all clear happens a lot. So that's my paintings try to tell some kind of story, and they sometimes use totally abstract images, sometimes less abstract, but it's sort of how I can just eject them from my body and put them on the canvas. So thank you, Marianne, for helping me through that development.
Well, it's been an incredible experience for me to watch your transformation from being a person who was looking to paint just to find yourself, and the early works were really direct story translations, you know, that the visual pieces were much more tied to literal stories or literal things. And as you've evolved, they've grown into very strong visual expressions that are still tied to a very literal awareness of what you're feeling, but they go way beyond being just that story. Do you know what I'm saying? The earlier works were very much just about that story. And as we all look at these, I think all of us can find our own story in them. And hearing your story behind them makes them so much more provocative, I think. And so thank you for sharing your personal journey.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, we're going to move on to Anne. Hi, Anne. I have to go find you. Where are you? I need to see you in order to talk to you. But start talking. I'll find you.
Okay. All right. So I'll start
There
talking.
you are. I see you.
Okay. I'm really grateful to be a part of these amazing artists, because the stories are incredible, and incredible stories of change and transformation. Probably the best way to start would be in the upper left, which really is an image that I started months ago. And I always start with reckless abandon and stay with the marks on the canvas and until I see a figure emerge. And then I start to work with the figure and get insight about myself and, of course, about the world that's impacting me. And so this figure reminds me of a book that I read a while ago on alchemy. It was called Pregnant Darkness. And so when I saw this woman, she was moving into the dark. And it's an alchemy. And so I realized she's the most recent painting that I finished or have completed. And I thought, oh, you know what? This is about alchemy. And alchemy is basically all about change and transformation. Back in the old days, it was, turning lead into gold, and fast forward to today with the more spiritual, psychological alchemy, it's about the practice of personal transformation through inner work. And I think that's what everyone has been talking about today, that painting brings to them. And I think that's probably why everyone is even on this call. It's because we are working on using art as, I'll just say, as an alchemical tool to bring personal transformation. So there's something about going into darkness, which people have talked about, the light and the dark. And so I think when you go into the darkness, it's like a period of gestation. And when you're bringing out new and creative ideas, feelings, and insights for yourself. So it's kind of like the physical womb and then the metaphorical womb of the soul. And in alchemy, I guess I can go to the second one. Essentially, you have to go into the dark to begin an alchemical process. And so the first stage is what they call negredo, or it's the darkness. And, loss of structure, it's chaos, loss of meaning, and kind of back to the primordial prima materia, the first, what we all come from, the soup, I guess that you want to say that we all come from. And also, it's interesting because I was reading about plants in the process of looking into alchemy, and plants grow when the light, they grow towards the light. If you think of a plant that grows towards the window, but a plant in darkness, it stretches and grows vertically because it's searching for the light. And so I think that's kind of what we're all doing, and as we go through this period of darkness, both literally today and also inside, when we're stretching ourselves and we are growing, whether we realize it or not. And then there's many stages of, so we can go to the next one. Alchemists have come up with all kinds of different stages, and I'm realizing this in hindsight now. When I saw all my things together, I'm like, oh, these are stages of alchemy. And there's a stage called calcinatio, which has to do with tending the fire. It's kind of like the inner attentiveness to the life of our soul. So when we tune in and we want to grow, that's where we go. And it's like we're learning how to live and to work with the flame that burns inside of us. And I think I did this pretty early on in my work with Marianne, and I realized I think it's like tending the fire of imagination and creativity. And that's part of what I was doing. And then fire has to do with purification and transformation, and just the heat, the transformative power of heat and how intense it can be. And we have to let go of old beliefs and patterns. So then the next one, there's another stage in alchemy called solutio, which is associated with water, and which is a cleansing and dissolving agent. And maybe we're dissolving, I'm dissolving. This piece was a personal piece for me in terms of I underwent a major surgery. And this is a piece that I did as I was preparing for the surgery. And I think that it does have to do with, for me personally, with dissolving like old patterns and releasing. The old has to dissolve before you make room for the new. And I had to lose a piece of myself to make room, for a different life going forward. So it was to me, it's healing. And then the final piece that I just wanted to put in here was, I think when we're in alchemical processes and we're working on our own personal growth through alchemy, I think that we have allies from the spirit world that can come and guide us and companion us as we're going through these dark times. And, you can think of allies as spirit animals, or maybe there's somebody that passed that's in the spirit world that can, maybe you talk to, or you feel their presence somehow when you're in an important, there's a synchronicity and something makes a lot of sense to you. I think it can come through books, when you read something and it just reverberates with you. So I just wanted to express that we do have, I do believe that we have allies in the spirit world all around us that help us through dark times. And I didn't really realize that there was so much, it's like putting a puzzle piece together. When I look at some of my pieces, it's like, oh, I think maybe I'm really talking about this alchemical process. And I just never know what's going to happen with each painting, because I start again from emotion and just putting things on the canvas and then watching something come forward. The end.
That was great, Anne. Very well said. And the paintings so reflect what you were talking about. And so let me open this back up. I want to just say that in witnessing, and I'm going to talk about my work some other time, because I really want to save the rest of the time for questions. And for me to just say that many of you talked about your work starting in reckless abandon, and it's so striking to see how different everybody's work ends up while starting in the same place of reckless abandon. And that's a real testament to reckless abandon being an experience that opens our own personal selves up into the making of art. And then how our own individual intellectual approach to creating a compositional structure based on what we're trying to say brings the work ever forward and increasingly different from each other's. So please, I'd love to hear from others, comments about the whole presentation, any particular artist that you have a question for. Please don't be shy. Just remember to unmute.
So,
Hi, Leslie.
hi, I just want to say, I just am awestruck by the vulnerability and emotion that people express through their work and how you can talk about it. And boy, I am so left-brained. I'm afraid what would happen if I let it out. And so I pulled back from reckless abandon. I pulled back to from not having shapes or identifiable forms. I keep going back to things that can be ordered, or and so I would like to be more be able to express my self-awareness. I'm not sure that I'm not self-aware, but that it's very difficult to share. So
I think you're getting there. I think you're actually closer to that than you think, but we'll talk about that together.
Yeah. But I just was, it's a big deal to open yourself up to people and talk about your art the way these artists have.
Yeah, it is. It's very, very unique. Lynn, thank you, Leslie.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for doing this, Marianne. I always enjoy your sessions.
Thank you.
So if I understand it, and this has been a question for me all, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? do you have the concept or the theme and then start painting using Marianne's system for painting? Or do you create and then afterwards say, how can I make this make sense? And what does it say to me? I know I've asked this question before, but I'm really interested in what your mentorship people have to say about what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Thank you.
Well, rather than me answer that, I'm going to let one of you all answer it. I'm one of the presenters.
I'm happy to add my.
Oh, okay.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Marlene.
Marlene. I need a little bit of structure. So I find myself thinking about an emotion like captivity or a state of being like captivity. And then I move into reckless abandon. And I think that awareness deep inside me informs what I seek out in the stage of reckless abandon. Then like, was it Anne who starts seeing, I see figures everywhere. So I see figures start to emerge. And then I end up often blocking some of them out again as I move forward. But I think it's difficult to distinguish the chicken from the egg. I think they're so closely intertwined.
Thank you, Marlene. Anybody else want to comment on that?
I would comment. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. I just wanted to give my reaction to this sort of incredible session we've just had, and say I'm kind of blown away by the the candid and heartfelt nature of the expression here. It's just been really wonderful, and I'm the artwork is wonderful too, and I'm thinking that it's so fascinating how different we all are and where we're coming from, and yet it's all based on what we're feeling. So one of the specific things this made me reflect on is, it seems to me that my work is basically been about my personal internal psychodrama, as opposed to, really understanding how I'm being impacted by what's going on around me. I mean, I am heartbroken by the nature of what's happening in our country. I'm a retired lawyer, and I have a particular strong connection to the rule of law. And to see what's going on is just breaking my heart. It really is. But it's not, I don't feel that it's coming out in my work. I feel that, that my work is more, as I say, personally driven by things that have happened to me in childhood, or, how I have grown over the years internally. And so it has made me reflect. There has to be an impact, doesn't there? I don't know, maybe there doesn't, but I'm thinking of how I've compartmentalized, I guess, in a way. And I'm just going to think about that. So thank you all for sharing the way you have. It's really been terrific.
Thank you, Karen, for saying all of that. It's great to hear you say those things. We're at time, unless anybody has a really pressing thing. Mimi.
I just wanted to say I feel very honored to be a part of this, and it was very emotional for me, and it made me also think, I don't know if any of you are familiar with John O'Donohue, the poet.
Yes.
And it just, his idea of beauty and what beauty is and how it can't be forced, and how, even the artist cannot, with all of its knowledge, bring forth that beauty itself decides if it is going to arrive. It's sort of like that, but it's this emotional connection. And I don't know. I just want to say it really quickly, but I
Thank
always
you.
have to read him quite often because it's just very beautiful.
And what that will spark me to do is to put in tomorrow's email with the recording a link to Krista Tippett's interview of On Being with John O'Donohue in 2008, just before he died. It's called The Inner Landscape of Beauty. So must listen.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, I think that's about all I have in me to say. This has been absolutely incredible for all of us, I think. And I have been on the verge of tears myself the whole time. I'm so honored that you all are here. And if I may say, I'm so very, very proud of all of you for making the work that you're making and to be part of witnessing that transformation and to be helping you on that road for transformation is a huge honor for me. And so I'll stop there.